This is an Irish independent podcast.
They look hard toward each other. 15 rounds or less. The world heavyweight title, the big fight, the big night. Unusual locale, Lewiston, Maine, round number 1.
Welcome. We decided to do something a little bit different today. An anniversary came and slipped by this week, as it tends to do these days. We are 60 years on.
Jesse Joe Walcott will now give the instructions.
Muhammad Ali, better known as Cassius Clay. Let's listen to the referee.
It's a well-told story. May 1965, Muhammad Ali versus Sonny Liston, and they're fighting in Maine. It's their second fight. Ali famously had beaten Liston 15 months before, and in doing so, he had shocked the world. In 64, Ali was the 8-1 outsider, Liston the much-vaunted champ, but it was Ali who won.
I don't have a mark on my face, and I upset Sonny Liston, and I just turned 22 years old. I must be the greatest. I told the world. I say, now, give us that poetry on number 7. He wanted to go to heaven, so I took him in 7. You took him in 7. I am the king of the world. Hold it. Hold it. You're not that pretty. I'm a bad man. Wait. I shook up the world. I shook up the world.
And now it's May of 65, and it's Ali who's the world champion, and this is the rematch. He's about to beat Liston again for a second time. The referee, Joe Walcott, addresses two icons of the heavyweight division.
I'm not going to go with a lot of preliminaries. I know you both know the rules of Maine, so I'm in here to enforce them. So I'll say to you, keep your punches up, protect yourself at all times. Good luck. Shake hands, come out fighting.
This isn't just the anniversary of an iconic fight.
As you noted there, wherever you might be watching, they tried staring each other down. They looked hard toward each other. 15 rounds or less. The world heavyweight title, the big fight, the big night. Unusual locale, Lewiston, Maine, round number 1. They score the fight here on a 10-point must-scoring system in Maine. 10 for the winner of the round, 9 on down for the loser.
It's the anniversary of maybe the most famous sporting photograph ever. If you're like me, at some stage in your teenage years, this poster was in your bedroom. Do a quick search of Ali Liston photo and you'll see it again. It's Ali standing over Liston, who's on the ground. Ali's right arm is cocked across his chest. His face is aggressive, his muscles are tensed, and Sonny Liston is sprawled helplessly on the ground, arms spread. I had the black and white version in my room, but the colour one is much better. There's something about the way the red gloves pop. It's stunning. It's a photo you can stare at. And if you didn't know any better, you could only imagine the ferocity of the punch, which must have put Sonny Liston on his back. Bear in mind, Liston is considered one of the scariest, most intimidating fighters there's been. He had a deep stare. He'd been to jail in his youth for armed robbery. Ali had talked about his hands being twice the size of his own. The knockout came in the first round, at 104 seconds to be exact.
We note that early, halfway through this first round, that Sonny is shooting mostly, although he's going to the head now, mostly toward that body. You know the old story, you kill the body and the head might follow. The knockdown, ladies and gentlemen, a right-hand shot. A right-hand shot on the chin. Jersey Joe Walcott. Sonny cannot move. Check the time.
Step forward Neil Lafer. Neil is just 22 years old and he's working freelance for Sports Illustrated. Ali threw the punch and Neil clicked. It's hard to imagine taking that photo at 22 years of age. At first, Sports Illustrated didn't realise what it had. The photo didn't even make the front cover. It didn't even get much prominence inside either. It was on the last page of the piece about the fight. What's so interesting about the photo is that it presents us with a simple tale. At a glance, the icon that is Muhammad Ali has just knocked out an anonymous figure on the ground, and it's that simple. But then you see the real-life moving footage of the punch, and the photo starts to make less sense. It's not the ferocious blow you'd imagined. It's not befitting of the sprawled Sonny Liston in the image. In fact, to this day, it's known as the Phantom Punch. Years after the fight, Ali, once again, was asked about it.
Anchor. I call it the anchor punch.
Can someone step and fetch it out here?
And people couldn't see it. It was so fast. Sport Illustrated clocked they got a slow motion camera. They clocked the punch, and the punch flew at 4/100ths of a second. You can break a second down to 100 pieces. You know how people win a ski race? They say he won in 16 100ths. He won in 32 100ths of a second. 4/100. They got a machine that goes like real quick, and it counts real quick, which is an eye blink, like a camera flash. That's 400ths a second. Now, the minute I hit Sonny Liston, all of those people blinked at that moment. That's why they didn't see the phone. I swear. And if you watch the film close, you gotta hold your eyes real close and keep looking about that. When I said, all right, I'm getting ready to hit him, you got to hold your eyes and wait, or you won't see it, man.
In the press conference immediately after the fight, Sonny Liston is surrounded. It's all a bit chaotic. The journalists are unhappy because they can't really hear him. And so a man in a suit steps in beside Liston and starts repeating and shouting some of Liston's answers.
Sonny, what happened when you tried to get up, and do you think that the fight was stopped before it should have been?
What happened when you tried to get up? Do you think the fight was stopped before it should have been?
Well, only thing I was trying to pick up the count.
Did you hear the count? Did you know what?
No, I didn't.
You didn't hear the count?
He didn't hear the count, didn't know what it was. There was no count, he couldn't hear it.
This is the other thing about this famous photo that we're marking the anniversary of. It doesn't capture the fact that Liston did get back to his feet and the pair began to fight on, no problem. But it turned out Liston had missed the count, and the referee, looking over at the corner, when he got word, eventually jumped in and stopped the fight.
Well, I thought the fight was still going because we had started fighting again. Did you see that? No, I thought the bell had rung.
He thought the bell had rung
and that the round was over.
Yeah.
Liston is also asked about his disappointment.
Sonny, do you feel a disappointment at all? What actually are you
Yes,
feeling?
I do feel real disappointed. I think it was because of my main point was to get him and get it over with.
Maybe the mark of a great photo is the more you look at it, the more it changes. So, at first glance, it's all about Ali. The real intrigue, though, centres on Sonny Liston, the anonymous figure at the bottom of the frame. History has wrapped its arms around Ali. He's an icon. He's probably the most iconic sportsman there's ever been. You can't help but look at him. Liston, by comparison, is largely forgotten. He's been reduced to a footnote in the Ali career. But when you mark the anniversary of this fight and that photo, he is worthy of attention for any number of reasons. For a start, the world thinks he took a dive. The greatest sporting photo of all time captures a lie. And the sprawled figure you see in the photo is acting. On the night itself, Cus D'Amato, who of course would later train Mike Tyson, spoke to the media. He was at the fight, and he jumped to the defence of Liston. He blamed the referee, and he alluded to what people were whispering about Liston's honesty.
He got up. He did not know he was counted out. No one told him that the count of 9 had been reached, or the count of 10. And I think that this man is being maligned when they say the things about him that they said. It was not his fault. My name is D'Amato, Cus D'Amato. Look, I don't care whose fault. It wasn't Liston's fault. He did not know what count it was. And he intended to arise. And he proved it by arising, and he did resume fighting. And then was informed it was too late. He had no way of knowing that he was counted, that the count, by the timekeeper, had ended the fight. As far as he was concerned, he did not know that the count had even reached 9.
But most people didn't really believe that, and they don't believe it now. The referee, incidentally, Jersey Joe Walcott, was a former fighter himself, and he never refereed again. It's hard to get a sense of Liston's personality in the clips we've played you. He wasn't a natural showman. He was not loved by the public. In a subsequent interview, though, Liston explains things pretty well. In effect, he says he couldn't get up with Ali standing over him, but that the count started from the moment he hit the deck. And by the time Ali had moved away and he'd got up, it was too late.
With the man standing over you, you cannot get up. Unless you use both hands, right? Unless you can't get up with him standing over you. See how he was standing over me? Did you see that fight? So by the time Walcott got him to the corner, the man on the outside had counted to 10, but me and Clay started back to fighting after I had gotten up. Am I correct?
I'm not saying you're correct, I'm just asking questions.
I mean, and then after the referee came in and broke us up, I went to the corner, but I thought the round was over.
There's no doubt Ali threw a solid short right hand, and it did catch Liston, you can see that. But a knockdown and the way he was sprawled, it feels doubtful. In the year 2000, 35 years after the fight, Liston's wife Geraldine told a journalist, "I think Sonny gave that second fight away. I don't know whether he was paid, but that's my belief, and I told him so." As for Liston himself, we don't have his mature reflections on that photo or that fight. He was dead just 6 years later. Ali would later say, "Of all the men I fought in boxing, Sonny Liston was the scariest." But on the night of the fight, Ali wasn't so complimentary. You can see him gesturing angrily at Liston to get up. He supposedly screamed, "Nobody will believe this." Ali reportedly told his cornerman he lay down. It casts a new interpretation of the anger in Ali's face in that photo. To what extent that night is connected with Liston's death is hard to say. He was found dead by his wife in the bedroom of their house in Las Vegas in 1971. The coroner ruled death by natural causes. There was heroin found in the kitchen, and people have suspected an overdose. But there is the theory, widely held, that Sonny Liston took a dive against Muhammad Ali because of the mob. And there are endless theories about Sonny Liston and that photo and that fight. 60 years on, we'll speak to Sean Assel. He's the author of The Murder of Sonny Liston, Las Vegas, Heroin and Heavyweights. Before we bring in Sean, just a word on Liston's background for context and how he found boxing, because it is remarkable. Liston was child number 24 of 25 in his family. He was from Arkansas. As a child, he was beaten at home. He struggled at school. He was teased because he couldn't read or write. And at the age of 22, he went to jail for armed robbery. It was in jail that he found his calling. Father Stevens was a Catholic priest in the penitentiary, and he also happened to run the prison gym. And he told Sports Illustrated, "Liston was the most perfect specimen of manhood I'd ever seen. Powerful arms, big shoulders, and pretty soon he was knocking out everybody in the gym. His hands were so large I couldn't believe it." Liston was freed on parole in 1953 and he turned professional. And he would be world champion just 9 years later. It should have been the ultimate Cinderella story. But from his release from prison and his move into boxing, the mob claimed Liston as their own. They would manage every single fight and control every single dollar. It would taint his career, it would taint his popularity, and it hangs over his premature death. Let's talk to Sean Assel.
We're waiting for that bell for round one. Here we go.
Sean, you're very welcome. Good to talk to you.
It's always great to be here. Thank you.
The impetus for the chat really is the anniversary of Ali Liston 2, is the anniversary of that photo. And it's funny, you know, in my youth, that photo was always about Ali. And now I find myself looking more at Sonny Liston on the ground thinking, what was going on inside that head?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there were a lot of people who were thinking the same thing, from the mob in Las Vegas to his wife, who rumor had it had been kidnapped by the Nation of Islam, to his kid who he had recently adopted. I mean, there was just a lot going on with Sonny right there. And, you know, the idea that he actually had so little incentive to win that fight is what makes the idea of the Phantom Punch, you know, so iconic, right? That you know, he had given up on the first fight after 7 rounds. You know, he had bursitis in the shoulder the first time around, so maybe you can excuse that. But he had also, you know, come to realize that Ali wasn't such a clown, that he had moved faster than anybody in Sonny's camp had expected the first time around. And dadgum, that reach. I mean, that reach just came out of nowhere and was a pile driver. And so Ali's height, his reach, his speed were all pretty rude awakenings. And so by the second fight, which nobody really wanted, which is why it was in a hockey rink in Lewiston, and none of the mainstream media wanted it. And frankly, none of the major promoters in boxing wanted it. So there you had this fight that Sonny had very little incentive to want to win in a hayseed town. Forgive me, Lewiston, Maine. You're very nice, but it was seen as a hayseed town in the boxing world. And I mean, I don't know. You had the recipe for a Phantom Punch.
So it's said of Liston that once he got out of prison in the early 1950s and turned professional, that the mob controlled him. They controlled who he fought. They controlled the money. And even in the build-up to when he won the world title off Floyd Patterson in 62, he'd been the number one contender since 1960, but Patterson's camp had cited his links to organised crime as a reason for not having the fight. By all accounts, JFK had told Patterson to avoid Liston when he met him, cited Justice Department concerns over Liston's ties to organised crime. So Liston and the mob, was that, as you understand it, a fairly mutual coalition? Did Liston go in there with his eyes wide open, or did they somehow get their claws into him through nefarious means and he was trapped forever?
There was a distinct arc to Liston's relationship to the mob. It started out the way it always starts out, which is, I'll turn you into something, kid, but you just go where don't ask me too many questions. Go where I tell you to go, do what I tell you to do, and here's the envelope at the end of the day. And as Sonny, flattens Floyd Patterson twice and then is widely regarded as the biggest name and the most feared name in boxing, I wouldn't say that he becomes co-equal with his mob sponsors, but certainly, he has a little bit more sway. And then you have this chapter where it's less the mob that he's worried about being, and it's more of the Nation of Islam and the black radicals, and you have the politics of boxing splintering. Ali very much responsible for that. Malcolm X very much responsible for that. And so the mob isn't what it was 10 years ago. But then in my book, The Murder of Sonny Liston, where you meet Sonny in the last year of his life, 4 years after this fight, his relationship to the mob isn't one of them sponsoring him, but him taking money and running drugs and leg breaking. And he says very much his own kind of capo, right, in Las Vegas. So he's learned from his mob sponsors and is now kind of angling to try to emulate them. It's a remarkable arc.
He wasn't beloved by the public, Sonny Liston, we should say. And even when he won the world title in 62 and he arrived back to Philadelphia, quite famously, he's expecting to be greeted by a huge crowd and he isn't. And this deeply affects him.
Yeah, it's interesting whether that was an apocryphal story or not, but apocryphal or otherwise. I mean, it is true that there is this turning point after Patterson where, he both idolizes and is friends with Joe Louis and sees that just like Louis was this icon during World War II, they sold government bonds with his face, that Sonny thinks, he can be like Joe, right? And he's ready to make that turn. It's just America's not ready to let him make that turn. Whether or not it was because America was racist, it was. Whether it was because Sonny was scary, he was. It just was a marriage that was never going to happen. And there's this iconic photo, not of him at the Phantom Punch fight, but of him on the cover of Esquire wearing a Santa suit under the headline America's Scariest Man. And as I write in the book, one of my favorite lines is that he looked like, a reindeer ready to shiv Santa. I mean, there was nothing about Sonny that was ever going to be warm and cuddly, even though in his mind's eye, he hoped for it. And so everything becomes then a case of the rubber meeting the road, right? Like, everything meeting Sonny's worst expectations.
Yeah. So we're marking the anniversary of Ali Liston 2 and the anniversary of that photo, and it's 60 years now. And still there will be debate about what happened in those closing stages. Did he take a dive, or was it a perfectly acceptable punch and you can see his head kind of retract into his body and so he went down? It was obviously a very messy ending with the count, and the referee, who never refereed again, kind of made a mess of things as well. What is your sense of what happened in those 15, 20, 25 seconds?
For the longest time, I was sure that this was a dive. I mean, there was just too much going on at once, including, and I just alluded to this earlier, this idea that the Nation of Islam had Geraldine Liston in a locked room just waiting for the result, or reports that there were snipers up in the rafters of the hockey arena ready to shoot him dead if he didn't go down. There was just so much arrayed around him that Why in God's name wouldn't he? And so maybe he takes the dive, but maybe then he immediately reconsiders what he does because he gets up, he's kind of ready to fight again. And just like in the first fight, you saw when he quit in the 7th round, before that in the 6th, right? He's like, should I, shouldn't I? So, yeah, I mean, I think he went down of his own volition, and then I think he began to think better of it. One more thing about the mob, by the way, it's exactly what a mobster would have done, right? I mean, go down, take the money. Why get hurt? Just go out with your head on your shoulders and your pocket stuffed with cash.
Yes. Has it been verified it's not true that his wife wasn't being held by the Nation of Islam?
No, not verified. And maybe she wasn't physically in a locked room. Maybe it was just a threat. Maybe it was one of the myriad threats that he had merely heard. But, you tell me who can withstand, even Sonny Liston, the meanest man in the world, who can withstand all of that coming from different directions?
Yeah. The reporting is that Ali is furious and screams, "Get back up," and tells his corner man he's after lying down.
Get up, sucker. I think that's the line. Get up, sucker. Yeah, because, Ali, despite the results of the first fight, still has something to prove. And this isn't the way he wants to do it. The obviousness of it, I think, also rankled Ali. I mean, maybe he was willing to accept that the Nation of Islam had the fix in, but maybe he didn't know. But it was clear to Ali, obviously, that this looked bad the second it happened.
Yes, you're making me look bad now by extension. Get up and let's do this properly kind of thing.
Yeah.
This obviously is just kind of devastating for Liston's boxing career. I mean, I know he fights on and he wins quite a few fights in a row, but like as a serious contender, as an honest broker, he's pretty much ruined.
Yeah, I mean, well, yes and no, right? So, he's banned by boxing commissions that were just looking for a reason to ban him anyway. Can't get a fight in the U.S., has to go to Sweden, comes back, and who the hell knows how old he is, right? Maybe he's 34 at the time of the fight. Maybe he's 5 years older.
I should intervene at this stage and just let people know. Birth certs weren't required when he was born, so there was always a big question mark over his actual age.
Right, in Forest City, Arkansas. And so he winds up taking a series of, fights that are beneath him, but yet remarkably kind of getting back up the rankings. But more than that, moving to Las Vegas. And there comes a point in the late 60s, America's kind of interested in him now in a different way, right? Like the Black Power movement has softened some of his edges. I wouldn't say made him into an elder statesman, but made him not the scariest Black person in America anymore. And so the press sort of comes out to his lovely house in Vegas, sees the shag carpet, the sunken living room, sees Geraldine puttering around in the kitchen, sees a play set in back because, his adopted son from Sweden, his wife is Danielle, is playing. And suddenly Sonny looks softer and suddenly America's interested in him again. And, suddenly Sonny is back in position. I don't know if you want me to keep going, but there is a denouement to this that makes it even more interesting and I think sets up his death.
Sure.
Well, that denouement is that by the time Sonny is poised to really make one last stab at it, Ali is poised to face Joe Foreman in what's supposed to be the biggest fight or the most expensive fight in history. I think each we're going to get $5 million. And Sonny was on track to fight Foreman in a warm-up to that. And if that fight had happened and Sonny had beat Foreman, oh my God, look at what would have happened. Of course, that doesn't, because Sonny goes down in his last fight, a former sparring partner who was supposed to be a walkover. That crushes Sonny at a time when he really thought he might have one last act in him. And he might have. Even at his age, he actually sized up pretty well against Foreman. Okay.
I suppose what Copper fastens this sense of mystery around Sonny Liston is his death in January of 1971. And it's a big focus for your book. He's still active, a professional fighter, despite that crushing defeat that you mentioned. And his wife has been away visiting her mother for the guts of 2 weeks. And she's struggling to get in touch with her husband. And so she rushes home, back to Las Vegas. And first sign of trouble is pile of newspapers and unopened milk at the front door. And in effect, she eventually finds Sonny in the bedroom. And he's been dead for several days at that stage, and the body is not in a good state. The coroner rules that he died of natural causes. There is heroin found downstairs. There's a police officer, Sergeant Dennis Caputo, who was first on the scene. He said no signs of forced entry or visible weapons or no signs of struggle. He also said it was pretty well known that Liston was a part-time user of heroin. So drugs were on the scene, albeit his wife, Geraldine, has disputed that her husband ever used drugs. There have been allegations that, did she clear a syringe away? Who knows? But it's death by natural causes, the official death. The heroin, there are syringe marks on his body. There are the mob links. Does he know things they don't want him to know? It's allowed a lot of people to come to the conclusion he was murdered.
Yeah, I went to Las Vegas. I turned myself into a cold case detective. And what I found was that there wasn't one, there wasn't two. There were a dang near dozen different scenarios where somebody different could have killed Sonny. He was working as a leg breaker and a collector for a Las Vegas band leader who was also running a heroin ring. Why do we know that Sonny did heroin, that it wasn't a made-up story? Because I talked to the guy who did it with him, Mark Rodney, later a musician, and became a good friend of mine. Did Sonny hate needles? Maybe, but you can snort heroin just as easily. And so there was that. There was the fact that Sonny was beginning to run his mouth a little bit too loudly. Let's get back to that Phantom Punch fight in a second, for being owed money for taking that dive. Well, if he was owed money for taking that dive, from who? Well, not from Muhammad Ali, but maybe from the Nation of Islam. But who wanted Sonny talking about that when Ali was about to face Foreman? Who wanted Sonny at that point over the hill in Las Vegas breaking legs to suddenly get in the middle of that? Well, everybody wanted him to be quiet. And then there were mobsters, and then there was the person who occupies the last third of my book, which is somebody who, when I knocked on his door, because I had found him through a unsigned envelope that was sent me, a Las Vegas informant said, "This is the man who killed Sonny Liston." I asked to meet him. He was a former cop who had broken bad. He opens his door, throws his arms wide, and says, "I guess you're here to ask me if I killed Sonny Liston." And that was the most remarkable turn in my book. I was already almost done. And here I think I found what I call in the book suspect number one, who of course denied it. There was a lot going on. I've been asked, haven't I just romanticized this? Do I really think he was murdered? My answer to that is that there are so many potential scenarios, I think, that it's more likely than not.
Right. Okay.
Joe, it was one of a dozen co-equal scenarios that I uncovered. The mountain of evidence was amazing. Whatever was going on, Sonny was not going to make it much longer.
Wow. Okay. Just 6 years on from that night and that photo and that anniversary that we're marking. So, as a final question, it's probably a very layered, complicated one, and you have to touch on Liston's upbringing and everything subsequent to it. How would you characterize him as a person, Sonny Liston as a person?
I mean, it's an interesting question, right? We all have to take responsibility for our own lives. I think Sonny felt that, forgive the Vegas cliche, that life had dealt him a bad hand, that whenever he was poised to realize his better angels, those angels were crushed, whether it was because of racism in 1950s America or, the vagaries of boxing or whatever else in Las Vegas, showgirls and heroin. I think Sonny never got to be the Joe Louis that he thought he could be. Was that his own fault or, external? Is it nature or nurture? Again, it's just one of those things that can be endlessly debated. I think the best I can come up with, and there's a scene in the book which I won't go into, but there is one scene where you see a pure Sonny in nothing but a beautiful moment. And I think that to the end, he still thought he could have been that person, but he was too far gone.
Okay. His wife, Geraldine, generally said very positive things about him publicly until her death.
Is that a question?
Looking for you to confirm that is the case.
Yeah, Geraldine loved her some Sonny. And one, well, as a writer, but certainly somebody who's been married for 40 some years, I learned never to judge anybody else's marriage. Gerald, I think there was some line I write in the book about how Sonny had always come back to her with his fragile fidelity. He loved her. It's just, they had the kind of marriage they had. I can't defend it. I can't support it. But there was a reason that I think Geraldine never gave up on Sonny. I think she saw those better angels too.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you so much for giving us a context, as grim as it is, to that photo and that career. As you mentioned, the book is called The Murder of Sonny Liston, Las Vegas, Heroin and Heavyweights. Sean Isel, thank you so much. Been a pleasure talking to you. Appreciate your time.
It's always good to be seeing you and to talk about this stuff.
And there we are. And so, 60 years on from that fight and that photo, which told such a simple tale, all was not as it seemed.
By a knockout, and still the heavyweight champion of the world, Muhammad